Okay, thank you so much. Okay, yes, so thank you very much, Eric, and thank you very much, everybody, and to the APAN group and the SOI Asia and all colleagues from our network and beyond. And so I'm Sugiura, and I would like to present very quickly, actually, the disaster risk reduction activity we do have in UNESCO. So next, I will talk first, because I wasn't sure which kind of people will be around, so I will give a bit of an overview in the UN context of DRR, what we have in terms of disasters in our region, and our activities as the Regional Science Bureau here in Jakarta, and all our DRR program in UNESCO. So first of all, so next, so very quickly, maybe everybody here in the room is very aware of what disaster risk reduction means, and that basically risk here in terms of disaster risk reduction is somehow a function of hazard, exposure, vulnerability, coping capacity, and so on. And so our activity here would be to reduce that with a systematic effort to analyze and reduce the factors of these disasters, and reducing exposure, reducing vulnerability, and augmenting coping capacity of people with preparedness and so on. Next, so our region actually is the most disaster-prone region and the most affected region. So this is like a little overview of disaster condition, let's say, in our region. So that's from 2015 from ESCAP data. So over 40% of the almost 4,000 disasters that happened globally during 2005 to 2014 happened in our region, and more than 500,000 people died due to those disasters, and it's representing, yes, almost 60% of the total global deaths related to disasters. And of course, the impact on economy is very consequent, with more than $500 billion of damage during these 9 years. So next. So what is then, as a UN, global context and efforts in reducing disasters and so on? So of course we have the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction that was adopted in March 2015, and I will present a little bit more. Then in December 2015, we also had the Paris Agreement on climate change. And in our region, we also have something a bit more specific on small island developing states, as they are very, very vulnerable to climate change. And so for the Sendai framework in March 2015, so this the Sendai framework was adopted through a chart with stepping actions for the upcoming 15 years, so from 2015 to 2030, with the goal to prevent new and reduce existing disaster risk through implementation of integrated and inclusive economic, structural, legal, social, and so on. So all levels of interventions to prevent and reduce hazard exposure, vulnerability to disaster, increase preparedness for response and recovery, and thus strengthen resilience. And this chart also is organized through 7 specific targets and 4 priorities of actions. And so the priorities of action being: number 1, understanding disaster risk; number 2, strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk; number 3, on investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience; and number 4, enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response, and to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation, in reconstruction. So that's also the guiding principle that at UNESCO we are working on. So I'm sorry, I didn't say next. It should be a slide now with the Sustainable Development Goals on it.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that was supposed to come one by one, but anyhow, I wanted to share here, of course, as a UN, one of now our mandate is to help member states to achieve the Agenda 2030 and deliver these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And I just wanted to present here how these 17 goals were actually linked, the logical flow between them, and how they were linked to DRR activities. So, well, now you have everything in one go, but anyhow, maybe I won't go through then because it was supposed to be some kind of animation. So, yes. So, well, in this logical flow, actually, we do have like some goals that are absolute needs and life resources and needs like represented by goal 14 and 15. And then, but to have like real development and sustainable development, the number one condition is decent work and economic growth. So goal 8. But to achieve that, we do have like some issues to solve, which are like hunger, health, gender, and water problem, energy problem, and also more bigger issues like goal 10, inequalities between countries and regions and so on. Number 2, goal 1 on poverty, and of course a global issue on climate change with goal 13. And so to be able to solve those, we do reaching a series of sustainable development goals, such as number 4 on education, number 9 on industry, infrastructure, number 11 on sustainable cities and communities, number 12 on responsible consumption and production. So these 4 are enabler goals to solve issues, global and local, then to reach goal 16 on peace, justice, and strong institution, and finally to lead to partnership for the goals. So that's how we see the things, all the SDGs being related to each other, and that's from I borrowed that from Professor Kamarul Azizi from USM University in Malaysia. And so among these 17 goals, 10 are related to DRR. So next slide. Please. So number on 4, UNESCO Regional Science Bureau for Asia and the Pacific. So I just wanted to explain what our office was. For first of all, UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. So we have several mandates. And our office in Jakarta is the Regional Science Bureau. So how it works within the global context and the national context. So our headquarters is in Paris, and the headquarters set with the member states, the strategic program objectives at global level. Then at regional level, so we have 2 regional offices actually in our region. Ours in Jakarta is for science, and the Bangkok office is for education programs. So we're covering 48 countries here. And so the role of our office is then to translate in a more regional context those strategic objectives developed by our headquarters. And also we are the national office for 5 countries in Jakarta. So we are the national office for Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Timor-Leste, and Brunei. And on these countries, so we then help also on implementing our programs at the national level, but not just in science, also in culture, education, communication, information, and social human sciences. And this in linking our activities, our mandate, and our programs with the national development plan of those cluster countries. So next. So it's slide 10. The mission of our office as the Regional Science Bureau is to mobilize science, technology, innovation, and policy for enabling the member states in our region on addressing new and emerging challenges, and to facilitate the course and set the course to sustainable development and achieve Agenda 2030. Next. So it's the slide on UNESCO DRR related programs. Actually, we have like 6 major areas in which we were working. And so, as you know, DRR is cross-cutting. It's not just science, so it's not just education, but a lot of different aspects are to be taken together. And so I will explain, give some examples on what our programs are doing in this regard. So next, we have what we call UNESCO designated sites. So I'm sure the most usually well known is World Heritage Sites. And we did a survey in 2015 on all our UNESCO designated sites, so not just World Heritage, but also what we call Biosphere Reserve, and I will explain after, and also what we call UNESCO Global Geoparks. So they are all sustainable development models, actually linking the territory to some activity, livelihood, and the community there. And so through a global survey of all our designated sites, we asked all the managers to tell us what were the potential hazards to which their specific site was exposed. And so from the survey, 3 major hazards came out. So flood and wildfire with 20% coverage. And the third one was mass movement with, for instance, landslide. So it's very, so that's the context for our designated site. And so in this, we have several programs, especially in natural sciences, that I will present then one by one and relate to our DRR activities. So we do have the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. Sorry, I didn't say next slide. It's the slide on natural sciences program and initiative. Slide 13. And we have also a major program, an international hydrological program, then one on biodiversity and ecosystem conservation, the MENA and the Biosphere program, and our newest program in science, the International Geopark and Geoscience program. And then we do have a number of initiatives like the World Heritage Initiative, Sustainability Science, Disaster Preparedness Mitigation, and also some on science. So next. So I would like to present on geohazard risk reduction, our activities there. So as I said, our newest program is the International Geopark and Geoscience program, and it's divided actually in 2 parts. One is more on supporting research on geosciences related subjects, so like earthquake, volcanoes, and so on. And a second part is on UNESCO Global Geopark. So what is a UNESCO Global Geopark? So it's actually a territorial entity in which the international geological significance have been recognized, and in which a management plan with a holistic concept of protection education has been put on place. And so it's a sustainable development model linking local communities with in mind this international geological significance recognized, and focusing on several aspects actually, that from natural resources, climate change, education, science, culture, sustainable development, and so on, but also very specifically on geological hazard. So how to link this management into like a potential geological hazard. So how it is in the IS. So sorry, this also was supposed to, next slide please. So you have a map of the world, but this was supposed to come, as an animation. So here you can't see very well, but actually we have 50 UNESCO Global Geoparks in the Asia Pacific. And in China, most of them from the region are in China, 35 of them at the moment. And so what is all these geoparks works in networks as well. And we do have also specific network for geohazard risk reduction, such as the International Consortium on Landslides, it's in Kyoto, the International Platform for Reducing Earthquake Disasters, the Partnership for Environment and Disaster Risk Reduction, reducing earthquake losses. And so we have also some regional network for that, and Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Education Sector, which we are linking as well with geohazard risk in particular. So next slide, on water-related hazards. So this is held within our hydrological program, so what we call IHP, which is the only intergovernmental scientific cooperative program in hydrology and water resources, and it's the oldest one as well. And it's delivered in phases, and we're currently in phase 8, sorry. And in this phase, focus on water security, responses to local, regional, and global challenges. And then, so this program is delivered also with 6 different themes, and theme 1 is water-related disasters and international changes. And it looked specifically at risk management as adaptation to global changes, understanding the coupling between man and natural processes, on the benefits from global and local Earth observation systems, on addressing uncertainty, improving communication, and also on improving the scientific basis to extreme hydrological events. So then how are we implementing this specific program in the region? So next slide, so slide 17. So that's our network in Asia and the Pacific. So we have what we call national committees, so the IHP national committees, and we have 27 of them. So they constituted of academia, research, national research institutes, and so on. And we have what we call water centers, and 6 of them. We have Dr. Miyamoto from ICHAM, which is one of our category 2 centers in Japan. And we have also, so I'm explaining the network that we are having here. In this region, we have 6 water chairs on also, I think, one on droughts, specifically one on droughts, and the one on landslides. I'm not mistaken. And then we have in this region, we are hosting 2 international initiatives. So the International Flood Initiative with ICHAM, and Dr. Miyamoto will kindly give us a presentation in session 3. And the International Drought Initiative, to which is hosted in Iran with the Regional Center for Urban Water Management. Who kindly recommended Professor Sima, who will also talk in the session 3. So then next, we also conduct some specific activities for flood with this Pakistan project, which is funded by the Japanese government, and for which we will have a specific presentation in session 4. So I don't say much more. Then next, slide 19, on tsunami program through IOC. So IOC is our Intergovernmental Oceanographic Convention. And so it has, so the IOC has a tsunami program to reduce the loss of lives and livelihoods related to tsunami. And this one as well, I will let my colleague Ardito to explain about it in session 3. So next slide on school safety. So it's this as well. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, it should have come as animation, but well. So we have some initiatives on multi-hazard school safety assessment and methodology and tools. And this also will be presented by my colleague, Mr. Ardito, on session 4. So I won't give more detail. Then next slide on disaster risk reduction in UNESCO designated sites. So actually this will focus on what we call Biosphere Reserve and World Heritage Sites. So next slide. slide 22, on MENA and the Biosphere program. So I would like to explain what it is and how it can relate to disaster risk reduction. So first of all, so the MENA and the Biosphere program is a program we have focusing on conservation of biodiversity and ecosystems. And so it's implemented around three main pillars: so conservation, development, and research and monitoring. And the way that it's implemented is to define and propose biosphere reserve. And so and a biosphere reserve is also a territorial entity in which we have a zonation of activities to enable conservation on biodiversity and ecosystems. So a biosphere reserve actually has a three kind of zone. So a core zone in which you only do monitoring and so no activities. A buffer zone in which some activities are related for training or education, a little bit of tourism, and then a transition zone in which then livelihood activities can take place, like agriculture and so on. And so this biosphere reserve are organized in network. And in China, there are 33 of them registered, and the China Biosphere Reserve Network is a very active one. So now, next slide. This program is organized around an action plan, and so the last action plan was agreed in 2016, and it's called the Lima Action Plan for the next 9 years. And it's organized around 5 strategic action areas, but the one related to disaster risk reduction is specifically looking at climate change mitigation and adaptation, and how Biosphere Reserve should serve as observatories for this monitoring and research and so on. So next slide, I'm showing here the map of all these Biosphere Reserve in our region. So we do have 142 of them distributed in 24 countries. And they are organized in 4 sub-regional networks. So EABRNet is East Asia, SACAM is South Asia, Central Asia, CBRNet is Southeast Asia, and PACMAB is the Pacific. And so next on the World Heritage. I think it's usually the most well-known activity of UNESCO, so this World Heritage sites. So they can be cultural or natural. And in these sites, actually, an outstanding universal value has been recognized, and it's the base for the sites to be to get scripted in a World Heritage list. And it's organized around 3 pillars: criteria, integrity, protection, and management. And so once you listed, you have a management plan, in which then should also look at your vulnerability to natural hazards. So next slide. We have now, in as 2016, there were 1,052 World Heritage sites, so natural and cultural. And that's it. So I would like now to go to the next slide, slide 27. On crisis, what activities on crisis and transition responses, and that's mainly taken care by the education and culture sector. So the aspect of DRR, so post-crisis mainly, and on sites and on education and culture aspects. So it's more like a project based. And you can see more information on the link provided here. And I would like just to talk, next slide, on one example that we have conducted here in our office in Jakarta. And it's on psychosocial support for high school students affected by Typhoon Yolanda in the Philippines. So on how teachers could deal with psychosocial impact of having lived a natural disaster. So that was supported by the government of Japan, and so we have developed a manual, and it's been distributed in the region. So of course, education is also a major aspect on enhancing people's resilience to disaster in general and to climate related risk. And next slide, that will be my last slide. So thank you very much. And yes, I hope you could see everything.